from the Salvation Army. Welcome, Colin. Submission number 15 and from page 19. It's right next door.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
I'd like to say thank you for making the time to review the policy. And I want to firstly acknowledge John and the time and effort that's gone into the report and to your team. And I want to say thank you very much for a very full and thorough report. And I learned some things from it as well, so it was really good. I've got a short DVD that I'd like you to watch first and foremost. It's a story from a married lady. She does not live in the district, but we hear this story frequently, and so I'd like the opportunity to just play that first.
My story and how I was affected by problem gambling and more specifically poker machines. And it wasn't until I started into a relationship with a guy who did play with it, sort of played them quite regularly, that I started, I suppose, to just become more interested in them. In some ways, he would travel away, and so I almost started playing them by myself as a substitute for him not being there, because that's what we did together. Things just started to get a bit stressful, and so I found myself playing them more, and then I found myself playing them in ways that it was becoming dangerous for me. I started borrowing money from the student association I was working for. Always meaning to pay it back, but you can't. And then, of course, after about a year or so, everything just fell apart. And I was charged and convicted with theft as a servant. After I'd been charged, I continued to gamble, and it wasn't really until I got that court date that I thought, I've got to go and sort this out. And so I went and saw counselling and contacted Dr. Phil's and drug and alcohol, as it was back then, and stopped gambling, stopped for 14 months. I was charged and convicted. I was served community service and also paid back the money that I'd stolen. So I went really well for about 14 months. I was working part-time at cooking, then full-time, and then it started to get a bit stressful. And I suppose I'd become a bit smug and complacent and thought, I'm getting free, I'm fine. And it was one night I'd finished work, it was about 11 o'clock, just sort of buzzing after a busy night working, wanted to go out. And there's that safety with poker machines, and found myself sitting in front of one and needed $250 later. So I was pretty much re-hooked just like that. And the next 3 years I was hooked really badly and just spiraled down, did the things, and I don't know if anyone will recognise these, but I'd come home from gambling and I'd walk into the house and the first thing I'd do is turn the light switch on to see when the electricity was still connected, because I would have had at least 3 sort of, we're going to disconnect your electricity, and it was disconnected. I lived for 18 months without a phone, because I couldn't afford a landline. Got evicted, had to live with my dad, and pretty much life sucked. It was horrible. It was a horrible way of living. So I decided, right, and made an appointment and saw Phil within 2 or 3 days and said, what about banning myself, was what I said. And he said, great. And so we just sat down that day and drafted up a self-disclosure letter, took a really bad photo of me and, photocopied it and sent them out to all the public.
We have a number of people that come into our office, and they'll come in for a wide range of issues, whether it be for food or whether there's been a domestic violence incident, and we very rarely find out about the gambling issue because people are dealing with the peripheral issues like food, rent, power, fun, all those. But I want to tell you what happened this week at 3 o'clock Monday morning. 3 o'clock Monday morning, there was a commotion down at the local moat camp. a lady was grabbed and forcibly pulled from a bed, naked, and thrown outside. She was cut, she was bleeding. The police were called, and they helped sort her out. The guy in the building poured the food parcel into the rubbish bin and threw all her clothes in the creek of the camping ground. And he swore and he cursed and he carried on. She was bundled into a police car and taken to the station initially, and then she was dropped off on the corner of Cranbourne and Beard Road, where her niece's place was, and she wasn't able to go into the niece's place, and she roamed the streets until about 9 o'clock, until an old lady saw her crying, and the lady brought her to me at 10 o'clock in the morning. And what had transpired was that he had got really angry with her because she wasn't going to allow him to have the rent money. What had happened was, that night, he had been to the Raj Bar and to the Spirited and had gambled all their benefit away. Meantime, during that same day, she had been out borrowing money off people to pay the rent. So when she came to us, she was in a very distressed state. Is it fair? Is it right? We talk about host responsibility, but excuse me, at 3 o'clock in the morning, all those nice things go out the window. I know that at 3 o'clock that morning, I was safely tucked up in my bed nice and warm. But imagine that woman's terror. That's this week's story for me. Where is she now? She's in another centre. She's being supported by Salvation Army people, and she's got a chance to get ahead. But here's the sad thing. When I talked to her, we found out that she had been beaten 5 times in 3.5 weeks. This local police station had gone down to the motor camp to see her. 5 times. On each of those occasions, it was in relation to his gambling and his drinking. Because when we talk about gambling, it's not just about the pokies or the horses. It's about a combination of the addictive personalities and the comorbidity of other issues that people with addictive personalities have. Generally, they don't have gambling on their own. They'll have gambling and drinking or gambling and relationship issues. It just doesn't happen isolated, nice and quiet. And that's why the figures aren't accurate. I can tell you stories of kids and children going without food, with power being cut off. We know the stories. We're in a low socioeconomic community and we need to take care of our people. You've heard a lot about the pokies and the gambling, and you guys are well versed in that. And your policy works. And we've seen a decrease. And I would encourage you to hold the line, as it were. I know that earlier on you were talking about TABs, and I'm going to fill in some gaps because there's a bit of a lack of knowledge in that area. The lotto spend in New Zealand went from 346 million to 418 million between 2008 and 2012. The TAB's revenue went from 272 million to 286 million dollars. The TAB is losing ground to both lotteries and the pokie machines, and that's why they're squealing the loudest about venues and stuff. In this document, Jared True has not told you the truth. And what I mean by that, and let me state it clearly, he says the racing industry in the Waikato region generates more than $370 million. So, here's my question. And Clause 8, he mentions all the stables, the racing tracks and everything else. But this policy is for the South Waikato. Do you know what racing does for this community? It sucks us dry. How can I prove that? Let me show you it this way. Firstly, we have no harness racing club in the South Waikato. One does not exist, so it does not contribute. 2, the horse racing industry. There's no horse racing track in Tokoroa. There's no major stable in Tokoroa generating jobs. So where's the benefit to this community from those extra jobs? Oh, sorry, I forgot. The racing club, the South Waikato Racing Club, does actually employ people. It employs 2 people from Matamata, a secretary and a treasurer, who are part of the Matamata Racing Club. And the South Waikato Racing Club holds 1 meeting a year. So then we have the greyhound racing. And again, there are 2 major players in this area, and they do provide some jobs, but not a lot. Not the millions of dollars that we're faced with in this document. They have 1 race meeting a year, and where's that? Cambridge. So I find it very hard to equate with Mr. Jared True's facts around our economic benefit for this community. Go down on a Saturday morning or in the evenings and look at how many people are filing in and out of that building. If it wasn't profitable, they wouldn't be there. So don't be blinded by the mirrors. And then we have the situation of the clubs talking about host responsibility and that they're much more safer to gamble in. By gum, they're a cheeky lot. They use such phrases as clubs are based on a collective ethos. Overall, we've seen clubs take responsibilities to their members and guests seriously, and they've worked hard on host responsibility. And they talk about that there's less harm in a chartered club. Less harm compared to what? They quote a saying, it talks about, and I'll read it here. They use quotes from the Problem Gambling Foundation which say, and I quote, clubs are demonstratively shown that overall they're a safer environment than pubs, and the Problem Gambling Foundation supports clubs being treated differently than pubs for the purposes of levy calculation, and so it goes on. And so they talk about clubs being a safe place, but they didn't put this quote from the same letter in their submissions, and let me read you this. PGF does not support any policy other than a sinking lid policy for territorial local authorities. Given the harm that these machines do in our communities, the responsible policy is to reduce the number of machines in total. If there was a choice between having machines in pubs or clubs, then Problem Gambling Foundation would choose to have them within club environments. However, our preference would be to have no machines at all. They used the other quotes from this letter. Why didn't they put this quote in their submission? So please, again, it's mirrors. The fact is, pokie machines are addictive.